What's up YouTube and welcome to another draw along with me where the channel at the time of recording is now 3 years old, where I've decided to go back to some of my previous tutorials, give them a facelift, revamp them and give them some new textures and colors and just give them a new lease of life. So let me know in the comments down below, did you ever complete my second ever tutorial, which this one is based off of? As always, you can grab all the requirements for today's design in the requirements section of the description down below. The canvas size, the palette, there's one just additional brush that you're going to need, where there's also a super helpful video on how you can install it into Procreate. As always, make sure to subscribe for weekly Procreate content. Enjoy today's tutorial, and with all that said, let's get started. So once you've created your canvas, the first thing we'll do is we'll go to our actions. We're going to go ahead and go to the canvas tab, and we're going to add a drawing guide as we normally do, and we'll edit that drawing guide and change it to whatever is a quarter of your canvas size. So for me, it's 500. So let's actually change that back one more and then hit enter. And then you can go ahead and set this to a bright color, something that you can see, maybe pink. And I'll just bring that opacity up for you as well. And then hit done. So we can work out all the scale against the grid and you can work out where I'm laying things out. We're going to go ahead and first of all start working on the foreground quickly. So we're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and grab the middle color here in the far right column. We're going to go to our brush and we're going to go into the option of organic and we're going to use the wild grass brush. Now I've made an edit of it. The only thing I've done is edited it and gone to the shape tab and then tapped on the shape source and just rotated it to the right. For me, in my orientation of iPad, this actually then works out technically upright. Do whatever works best for you. As long as the blades are somewhat upright, you're fine. It just needs to be upright for this particular part. We'll set the opacity to 100%. And we'll set the size to 5%. And we're going to start by creating like a bit of an arc almost. So just sort of swooping down in the middle and raising its way up on the sides. And that's probably a little bit too sort of generic kind of arch. I want to get in there then and kind of just mess up a few of the blades a little bit more with some varying amounts of pressure and maybe even just bring that a little bit higher as well in the middle. So I'm just going to swoop that up to the right. That looks pretty good on height wise, and then I'll just kind of mirror that a little bit more over here on the left hand side. We can always adjust it afterwards, and then we'll just go ahead and block in the rest. So we're just going left to right, blocking it in, adding in that cool wild grass kind of texture. And then I'm just going to grab my cursor and I'm just going to move mine down just a little bit till it roughly runs sort of here in the middle of the bottom row, and make sure it's nice and centered, of course, as always, and tap on our cursor when we're done. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to my color. I'm going to grab the color in the bottom right of the palette, which just basically needs to be black almost. And if we go to our layer, we're going to swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, we're going to tap on it, we're going to alpha lock it, and we're going to tap on it and we're going to fill it. So we've filled it in with that dark color underneath. We can swipe from left to right on both of these and group them together, and let's just rename this group and let's call it foreground. So things are nice and organized. And then the one that's got all the color on that you can see here, we're going to tap on it and we're going to go ahead and go to the option of mask. And then making sure we're on the mask here and our color is set to black by double tapping at the bottom of the disc. We're going to go to our brush and we're going to go to airbrushing and the soft brush. And with the size set to maybe something around about 10 to 15%, it really does not matter. I'm just going to go ahead and simply blend out the bottom down here. So you're going to leave the blue color towards the top, and because we've masked it, we can always come back later on and sort of adjust it how we want. We will be coming back to this later on, so this is just to get us started. Let's then go ahead and collapse this group down now, create a new layer and drag it underneath the foreground, and then we'll create another new layer and swipe from left to right on these, and let's group them together and let's rename this and let's call it mid ground. And then we're going to go ahead with the bottom layer out of the two. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here, the top of the fourth column. We're going to go to our brush and we're going to go to calligraphy and the monoline brush. And my monoline brush has a little bit of stabilization on it. If I tap on it and go to stabilization, you can see the streamline and stabilization. That may need to be brought down a little bit, to be fair, just for this particular part of the design. So let's drop it down to about 70 and 30 and hit done. And we're going to go ahead and draw in two pieces of land. The first one being over here on the right hand side. It's going to start roughly here. And I'm going to bring the brush size down. I want it nice and small so I can be a bit more sort of intricate with the bumps and lumps. It's going to then sort of run out of the design roughly around about here, like in behind. So I'm just going to draw in a line that just runs to the edge. And then it's going to run to around about sort of here almost. So around about sort of this point about there. So what I can do now is, now I've put these little markers in, I can just simply go ahead and draw in something along those sort of points. As long as I sort of draw them together like a bit of a dot to dot, like when we were like kids. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw this in up to here, and then I'm going to let that just run all the way out over to the very top and just smooth that out a tiny bit. And then from the bottom, we can go ahead and draw in along here. Now you can go ahead and sort of make the land a little bit more interesting and create little sort of cuts into the land like this, and seeing what you can come up with. You don't want to make it too repetitive. So as long as you draw something a little bit like that, you can drag and drop the color in. And once it's filled in, you could potentially get in there and sort of grab your eraser, tap on your eraser, and just use the monoline brush as well. Bring the size down and let's just chop away, maybe sharpen up some edges, just make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit less repetitive. We could even just simply just like smooth out one of them and get rid of quite a large area of land there. And I want to sort of sharpen that one off definitely a little bit too. So just a very simple area of land. We're going to go to our layers and go upper layer as well. And then we're going to go to our brush again. And we're going to repeat on the opposite side to get sort of a gauge from that side over there as to where you want to sort of set this out. I want the sort of point of the land to maybe come a little bit closer towards us in terms of a little bit lower. So I'm just going to make a dot roughly here. And I know that it also needs to go ahead and run to around about sort of this midpoint up here. And again, as I've sort of shown you before, if you draw from out here and then draw inwards to around about, say, here, I could just link the dots together. So we want to kind of follow a little bit of the characteristics of that side. So we're going to try and sort of make sure that the land in this particular area of our design has some sort of similarities to the land around it, but it does not have to be completely perfect and match up accordingly. You can create whatever you want. So I can create some land in here, and then maybe like a little cutaway into there as well, and then just go out and meet up to the land a little bit. We can always go ahead and refine it. I think I will. I want to get rid of this little bump here. So I'll just grab my eraser again, and we can just chop away into here. And just hacking away into it sometimes is the best option. You can just get the basic shape in, and then you can really sort of have some fun adjusting it, seeing what you want to come up with for your land. And I quite like these little random little drop-ins. They look really cool as they make their way off of the land on the left. You can always have some fun with it and just create whatever landscape you like. Now, while we're working on this, let's finish these sort of areas off. I want to sort of make them kind of pretty much done. So we're going to work on the left side to start with. I'm going to create a new layer in front of it. I'm going to tap on it and clipping mask it. But before we carry on, we'll go to the actual base shape of it. We'll tap on it and we will alpha lock it so we can't paint outside of it. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the 5th color on the top row. Our brush wants to be the airbrushing and the soft brush. I'm going to set the brush size to around about sort of 20%. That's probably way too big to be fair. Probably about sort of 12 to 13 or 15 even. And just on that top edge, it's a very light change of color, but it's just a light gradient of this slightly more lighter blue color on the top surface there. It's very subtle. You should just about be able to see it in your own work. We're then going to go ahead and the clip layer above, we're going to go to our colors, and we're going to go ahead and grab this color here, the bottom of the 3rd column. We're going to go to our brush, and for you it will be under imported, but for me it's under artistic, and you're going to want to grab the Leatherwood edited by Procreate #1. The opacity is set to 75%, and the size is going to be set to probably 3 or maybe even 2%, depending on sort of how this works out in terms of sizing. And 3 probably is a little bit too big. Let's remove that, drop that down to about 2%. And what we're going to do is we're going to obviously imagine at some point our light source is going to be up here in the middle. So over here on the left, I'm just simply going to go ahead and sort of draw this down here, like brighten up this edge. And we're going to try and just invent some texture on here using the Leatherwood brush. You don't have to cover absolutely everything. You're kind of looking for, on the left-hand side, because the light source is in the middle, you want to just add sort of color to the right-hand edges. So take a look at all the edges you've created and just sort of imagine, how would the light land on it? How do you imagine that the light would land? And the wonderful thing with this Leatherwood brush is you can just add in like random little lines here and there. So it's really kind of quite, you know, large grooves in this land, but you can also use it to like add in tiny little bits of residue here and there. So when you come down here, for example, can I imagine that this now drops in front? So it comes down here. So let's redo that. Let's maybe draw in a line, and then maybe it just runs down towards the lake or the ocean, whatever this may be on this planet. And you can just really have some fun here now, just really flushing out how the texture works, and just see what you come up with and see what sort of style you like. Whatever you do on this side, you're going to need to somewhat replicate on the opposite side. So at the top here, again, imagining where that light is catching, I'll just brighten up here, and then I'm just going to use the leather wood here and there, just add in tiny bits, as I always refer to them as little bits of residue here and there. And then just because this area is nice and big and on its own, and you can sort of imagine that, okay, maybe there's another kind of little bit that sticks out a little bit further. Just because it's in the silhouette here doesn't necessarily mean that it's not, you know, an area that maybe sticks out, and there's another little sort of formation of land here that, you know, maybe does run all the way down and into this tiny little bit here. You know, maybe I can brighten this up and just allow that to run up, and then you create other areas of landscape. And you don't want to sort of cram in too much. Less will always be more in this particular sort of style, but just adding in enough sort of area there that you can really get an impression for how that landscape plans out and how all the sort of edges catch different areas of lighting. And I could maybe even add in another one here. Again, let's try and abide by the concept that less is more. So I'll remove it. It's just, sometimes it's just like a little bit of trial and error. I want the little areas of residue here and there, just tiny little residue of where the brush basically just sort of scrapes on the screen and doesn't quite add in a large quantity of color. It just adds in like enough that you get the impression that there's like a rock or something just there. So once you've done it, you then want to go ahead and tap on the layer, and you want to alpha lock it so we can't paint outside of it. We're then going to go to our colors and grab the bottom of the second column, change our brush to airbrushing and the soft brush, bring that brush size down around about maybe 4%, and where I've got my brown here, for example, I'm going to blend on the top here and blend down. So I want to create like a brighter spot on the top. I want to, you know, create like a lovely little lots of gradients here and there. Now, certain areas, I encourage you to go to your selection tool and make sure color fill is turned off and use the freehand option. And then just draw around a particular area that's isolated, so like this one here, and then tap on the dot. That way, when you go to your brush and you start painting in here, let's set this a little bit larger. I'm just going to go ahead and just paint over the top freely without affecting the other areas as well. And then I can go ahead and tap on my selection tool when I'm done, tap on it again, select this one here, tap on the dot, and again, go back to my brush and just sort of blend in that extra tone on the top there. And now while we've got that area last selected, there's a third color, a final color at the bottom here of the first column. Reduce the brush size down. And then you just want to sort of add this brighter tone just towards the top edges only. So I've just added in a tiny bit on there. I tap on my selection tool, tap on it again, and then select that middle area yet again. So you're creating like a gradient between the brown, the somewhat orange tone, and then this brighter tone up here on the top edges. Again, tap on your selection tool when you're done, and then these areas down here are small enough that I could probably bring my brush size down to around about sort of 3% and just get in there manually. And I can even add some onto like this ledge here as well if I feel it's necessary. So you create this lovely little textured effect here. Now what we can also do is we can go to the layer, we can tap on it and mask it. So we can add a mask to it. Again, making sure you're on the mask here. Your brush is set to black. You just want to set the brush size to something nice and small, nice and controllable, about sort of 5%, and you can just blend out some of the edges. So like where the line starts and ends, you can just blend that out, creating a lovely gradient. Like here, let's bring that size down to about 2%. You could always make a selection like we just did previously, but I can blend this out, and I can blend out certain areas. I can pick and choose where I want to blend out a line, so it just fades away naturally into the shadows of the land. You don't have to do this absolutely everywhere, but it will help your land just nicely fade into the silhouette of whatever that shape is that you've created. So let's go ahead and move over to the opposite side and repeat those steps over here too. If you want to, you're fed up with doing it, just simply copy all of that and move it across and just get rid of this piece of land. But I'm going to repeat the steps. So I'm going to go down to that layer. I'm going to tap on it and I'm going to alpha lock it. So this bulk here of land. I'm going to go to my colors and I'm going to grab the top of the fifth column. I'm going to go to my brush and I'm going to go to the soft brush again under airbrushing. 8% just lightly with this sort of lighter blue tone, just blend that out on the top, creating a nice lighter tone up here. And then again, we're going to create a new layer. Tap on it, clipping mask it. Go to your colors and grab the bottom of the third column. Go back to your brush and go into the option of artistic for me, and leatherwood edited by myself. For you, again, it will be under imported. And again, we're going to take a look at the land, see where we can brighten up. Now the opposite rules apply. The light source is in the middle, so we brighten up the left-hand edge of any of these areas of land that we feel is applicable to where the lighting is hitting. So I'm going to brighten up this edge here. I'm going to bring that down maybe a little bit, and then let that maybe sort of branch off and fork off over there, adding in some areas of texture, rocky stone areas. And then with these areas here, for example, you can again just sort of, maybe I can run like a large piece of land that makes its way up, and it just literally just dives straight down into the water's edge, like so, right down towards the water. Up here on the top, we can just sort of really add in some good chunk of color here, and maybe I'll introduce like a scraping of land that just comes through here. And it's really random. You're playing a random game here. You're just adding in random lines. As long as they all point in that kind of downward direction, I think you're fine. Again, I can maybe introduce like this area here and let that run down close to there, imagining that again those areas are running right down into the water's edge, and that's fine. Let's see what else we can maybe do. Let's maybe add in like a tiny one here in this space. You always want to also take a look at the opposite side and make sure the amount of sort of space and highlight in brightest areas that you've added is very similar. So I just need to add in like little areas of residue, as I keep saying, like in behind some of these areas, the odd little rock that's catching some light from the scene above, and the odd little extra speck of just minor detail that, again, you're playing a random game. So let's just keep going a tiny bit longer. Up here, I'll just brighten that up a bit more. A couple more specks, and I think that's good. So I'm going to leave that like that, and then repeat the same steps as I did before. Go back to the layer, tap on it, and alpha lock it so we can't paint outside of it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go to our colors and grab the bottom of the second column. And your brush wants to be changed to airbrushing and the soft brush. Let's set that size to something nice and small first of all, so I can just brighten up the top edge of that little point on its own. 4% brush size, I'm just going to brighten up the top edge of here. So we've got a nice gradient between them. Again, make those selections if you need to. As long as they're kind of spaced out enough, you should be okay to just do it yourself, and you shouldn't have to make those selections, but just in case you do. And then let's maybe think about, okay, let's add some onto here, but nothing back here. Let's just leave that with the brown. Let's just imagine that the light's not quite strong enough that's going back there. So let's just leave that with brown. Let's then go to our colors and grab that bottom of the first column color. And again, brighten up the top edges with just this brighter, lighter tone. Brightening that up, blending down into the previous color that you selected, and you can brighten up right across that top edge here. I'll add in a little bit on there, just a tiny little speck. In fact, I may just leave that with the yellow, because then it's getting more light than this, but not quite as much as these ones here that are being seen by our scene above, being lit by it. And then again, we're going to repeat the same steps. We'll tap on this layer and we'll add a mask to it, making sure again you're on the mask, your color is set to black, and your brush is still the soft airbrush, which is what we were just working with. We can just go ahead and set this to about 3% and blend out the edges, so blending them out. And you can do the side as well if you want, like here. I can just get rid of that a tiny bit more, like so. Just maybe bring that down in size a tiny bit, and down here at the bottom, I think I'll leave that one, but let's just blend out there. Let's blend out here. Let's take a look at everywhere else we've got. Let's blend out here. And I think these little blends just look fantastic. Just softens it up a little bit and just allows your highlights to just naturally just fall away into your shadows. And then let's blend out just a tiny bit at the bottom there. And it should soften them up a tiny bit too as well. So you should end up with then a very similar aesthetic to the opposite side. That is awesome. Now we are going to come back to this later on, so I wouldn't sort of urge you to compress that down yet. And if we collapse the mid ground group down, Let's go ahead and create a new layer and drag it underneath there. And let's just rename this singular layer and call it water for a moment. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab any random color. So for a moment, I'm going to grab the color in the top right of the palette. I'm going to go to my selection tool and grab the rectangle option and set the option here of color fill to on. So we've turned that on. And then roughly around about 2/3 up in this third row down. So 2/3 up, so it's around about sort of here. I'm going to draw in a rectangle edge to edge and fill out the whole of the bottom area and let go and tap on my selection tool when I'm done. And that's going to be your horizon line. That's where your water is. And you can now see we create this kind of cove down here. Now that's a temporary color. We will come back and fix that later on. For a moment, let's go down to our background color and change it to this color here in the bottom right of the palette. We'll hit done. We'll create a new layer and drag it underneath the water, and then we'll just create another new layer again and swipe from left to right on both of those, group them together, and let's just rename this and call it sky. Now in the sky group, we're going to go to the bottom layer of the two. We're going to go to our colors and grab this middle color here in the far right column. Soft airbrush again, probably a good size, maybe around about 15%. Now that's pretty good. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go along our horizon line here, kind of adding in a good amount of blue and blending it up, create like a little bit of a blend out. So it's just nice and faded up into the sky. And I typically don't like my night skies to be just completely black. So we're going to lower that brush size down to around about maybe 8%. And we're just going to allow that blue just to randomly just squiggle up. My pressure is extremely, extremely light right now. So I'm just sort of squiggling my pen. I can make my brush size even bigger, maybe even about 11% if I wanted to be a bit braver. And I don't want to make it too colorful. I just want to lightly just create variations in the sky that's not just black. We want black right at the very top, but not down here where you've got environmental light from the planet we're on looking at this scene. You know, you want that to have like a little bit of a blend up. It's very, very, very subtle. And you may not even be able to see it very well on camera, but it's there, it's very subtle, and you'll be able to see it in your own work as well. Now, before we carry on, let's go ahead and draw in the circle for our planet. So above our sky group, we're going to create a new layer, and again, create another new layer and swipe from left to right so we can group them together. And we're going to rename this and we'll call it planet. The bottom layer out of the two, we're going to go ahead and go to our colors. Again, I'm going to grab a temporary color for the moment. So I'm going to just double tap in the top left to select white. I'm going to go to my brush and calligraphy and the monoline brush again. And all we're going to do is draw in a circle at the top here. I'll give you the final dimensions in a moment. We're just holding our pen down and then popping a finger on the screen at the same time to make a perfect circle and drag and drop the color in. And if we then go up to our cursor, we make sure uniform is tapped on and we tap up here. We just want to change this to 864. And it will just resize for you, and then we can just pop it in the middle, making sure snapping is turned on. You should just be able to pop that in the middle, pretty much above, sort of in the gap above the water, nice and sort of evenly. Doesn't matter if it's slightly too high or too low, to be honest, it should be okay. Let's make that a little bit higher, tap on our cursor when we're done, and we've got our planet location. Let's then go ahead and start to add some color to this as well and build out this area up here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to the actual circle itself for a moment, go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and we're going to grab the color here in the bottom right of the palette and drag it into there. Now if you added in a good amount of blue, for example like me, you may just about be able to see the silhouette and the outline of the circle. It's not critical that you see that, but you should just about be able to see sort of the boundaries of it. If we then go to the layer above and we tap on it and we clip it to the base shape, we're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and just randomly add in some lovely colors, all of these colors here. So I'm going to grab the first one in the middle row and we're just going to go from left to right. Your brush wants to be changed though. We want to change the brush to airbrushing and the soft brush. Let's bring the size down to something a bit smaller, probably around about 4 to 5%, maybe even 3, depending on how much color and little dashes you want to make. And then just imagining, of course, we've got a circle in the middle. I want you to kind of create lines that kind of somewhat go in this direction outwards. So they don't always have to go in that direction, but somewhat. I just want you to sort of add in blades of color, make them nice and random. They don't need to sort of be quite uniformed. You can just add in little areas like this and right up to the edge as well. Then go to your colors and go to the second color in that middle row. And just repeat. You don't have to, again, make patterns. You can go right up to the edge if you want. You can add in some towards the middle. But make sure you don't do too much of one color. So third color now, Introducing a bit of blue at different angles. Make sure they kind of somewhat touch as well. You can make them touch so that you can then get nice variations in our little effects that we're going to add in shortly. Little dashes there. I'm going to switch to the next one, so the fourth color. It really doesn't matter. This is where everyone's planet is going to look really different, and that's going to be the wonderful thing about this. You'll all get very different effects. Now I'm going to switch to the purple, which is the final color. The fifth color now on that middle row. Adding in some purple, trying to make sure that there are good blobs of color here and there. You know, some are nice and punchy and colorful, and we've got a good little sort of random splattering of the colors. Now, feel free to add as much or as little to this as you like. In a minute, when we do the liquefy effects, you may want to come back to this and go, I tell you what, let's add in some more color. You know, let's maybe add in like a little patch here and there of extra tones, but that's totally up to you. So we're going to go up to our adjustments. We're going to go to the option of liquefy. The first one I want to go to is if we change the option, we're going to go to the option of crystals. The brush size probably needs to be around probably a bit larger than that. Let's go up to around about 55% until it sort of covers up the majority of the planet. And then from the center, I'm just going to go round in a circle and watch how those colors are now starting to get dispersed and pushed out the way and really sort of just distorted completely. And we want to just really push all those colors out right up towards the edge. You can just manually get in there and just really break them down if you want and push them out, get in there, create nice randomness to it. That's what we want. That was the same in the very first original version of this tutorial. We used the liquefy effects to just create a really random aesthetic. Then what we can also do is we can go to our option and change it to the option of 12 right. We can make it a bit smaller, maybe down to about 40%, and just get in there and try to add in some very smooth, very subtle twirls and curls in here. So you can just push them around. You'll get some nice little sort of drags of color here and there. And just, we want it to be super nice and random. So I'm just going around a few times, just seeing what adjustments and minor changes we can make. You can hold down in certain areas. If you hold down, you can create these really random little spirals as well, which kind of look quite cool, but I don't want to add in too much sort of fine detail in this because it's going to get overlapped in a moment with some extra color. So let's leave that as it is and tap on our adjustments when we're done. We're then going to go ahead and create another new layer, tap on it and clip it to this stack to the planet. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab this blue here. It is the fourth color in that middle row. Your brush should still be the soft airbrush as it was. And we're going to add in some sort of lighting, some basic lighting. So about sort of 10 to 15%, depending on what you're most comfortable with. I'm just going to sort of blend around the bottom area here, creating a nice coat of blue. And then up towards the top right area, a little bit of blue as well, bringing that across towards the middle area and around the top. So you're kind of just creating the top right edge and then the bottom edge and leaving a bit of a gap in the middle. You can, though, just lightly add in the tiniest little coat if you wish. I'm then going to go ahead and go to my layers and create another new layer. Of course, tap on it and clipping mask it and change the color. I'm going to grab the purple this time, the fifth color in that middle row. And I'm just going to add in the lightest little sort of purple patch just in here. Just a very, very tiny amount of color. Let's add in some texture. So we're going to go to our layers. Again, create a new layer. Tap on it, clipping mask it into the stack. And go to the base color for it, which is just black. So we'll just go ahead and grab the color in the top left of the palette. We're going to go to our brushes and we're going to go to textures and we're going to use the Dove Lake. I always use Dove Lake for my planet textures. So textures and Dove Lake. We want the brush size to be large enough that we can sort of cover this quite quick and easily. So about sort of 12%, and we're just going to cover the majority. Now don't press too firm. We don't want to add in like a really, really super dark patch too quickly. You can overlap it and then pick and choose where you want to add some darkness to. Like I could add darkness up the top, but I don't want to add darkness here because we've already got like a dark empty patch there. Now we're going to distort this though. We're going to go up to our adjustments and liquefy again. We're going to change the effect though to the option of expand. We want to set that to something again that's large enough to pretty much cover the circle. So about sort of 55%. I'm going to go round in a circle here in the middle and I'm just pushing that texture. I'm expanding it in the middle and I'm just compressing it around the edge, and you can pick and choose when you think the limit has been reached. I like it when the edges are nice and compressed like down here, but in the middle you do have the like odd little sort of bit of the Dove Lake that you can clearly work out and see the detail. So I'm going to tap on my adjustments now because I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the blend mode from normal. I'm going to change it to the option of overlay. That should also then crisp up a few of those details as well. So now we have this wonderfully textured, colourful planet. Now we're going to go ahead and add some lighting. So let's create another new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. Feel free these pink, purple and blue ones to pinch them together, maybe even your texture at the bottom. You can pretty much pinch these four together if you're concerned about your layers, but I'm going to carry on and just keep hold of them. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to change the blend mode from normal to add. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the, let's grab the color here, the second color on that bottom row. Our brush wants to go back to the airbrushing and the soft brush. I'm going to set the size to, again, maybe about sort of 10% looks a bit big on this occasion. Let's go down to about 7 or 8 because we're going to go ahead and add in a bright glow to the bottom. Now I'm starting really light with my pressure and I want to sort of bring the glow a tiny bit up so I can sort of crisp out the edge of this planet. So I'm just going up here a tiny bit to just add in a bit more lighting, and then towards the bottom here I'm going to blend that out, and I'm just going to try and press a little bit firmer down here just to now sort of add in a brighter glow coming from the very bottom. You can set your brush size a bit smaller if you wish, if that's more comfortable. And then again, I just want to kind of brighten up just the very edge of the planet so we can see how it's been lit. Lovely stuff. Nice crisp highlighted edge on there. We're then going to go ahead and we can do it on the same layer. We're going to go to this orange here at the bottom of the fourth column. Let's set the brush size to, again, around about sort of 8% maybe. And in the top right corner, I know a circle doesn't have a corner, but the top right area, we're going to go ahead and kind of just bring in a nice coat of orange, again, really lightly onto the planet's surface. And then we're going to kind of follow by the same principles we did just a second ago. You know, we're going to brighten up this top right area, adding in a bit more color. And I'm just going backwards and forwards with a bit of a curve in my sort of motion. And I'm going to push this color down a little bit more over there and a little bit round at the top. And in that top right area up here, I want to really add in some bright color because we're going to add a flare, of course, in behind here, as you'll have already been able to see from the finished result. So we're just going to add in a bit of a color and then just make sure that that top right area there is nice and orange. Let's then go ahead and add in some glow in behind the planet. So we're going to go down into the sky group for a moment. We've got an empty layer there. We're going to go ahead and with our color set to the same color at the bottom of the fourth column and our soft airbrush still probably around about maybe 9 or 10%, whatever again you're most comfortable with. In this top right corner, we're going to go left to right, following the curve of the planet and slowly making our way outwards. So we want to just add in a bit of a orange glow around and up and out towards the sort of atmosphere a little bit more. And you want to make sure it's nice and smooth and just blends in behind the planet a little bit. And let's make that a bit smaller now, maybe around about 6%. Push it out a little bit further, but also just in behind where we're sort of imagining where our brightest point is. We need to make sure that this is nice and sort of colourful. So quite a good amount of pressure now just in behind this curve here, where I know that is again going to be our brightest little spot in behind there, because we're going to add an add layer to it in a minute. We have to have that color to work off of. So a good glow there. We can always tone it down later anyway. We're going to go ahead and create another new layer, change the blend mode from normal to add, and we're going to repeat. We're going to get in there again. We're going to set it a bit smaller though, probably down to about 4 or 5%, and just really brighten up where we think our flare is going to be again in that kind of top right spot, and let it just run in behind the planet there and brightening up this area here. You should eventually be able to build up a really lovely bright glow from just over here and in behind our planet. Look how much more bright and vibrant this line is becoming. So I can just go ahead and push that a little bit higher and round a bit more, and then really bulk out this area. So I'm going to just add a bit more color and just keep expanding it bit by bit, you know, stroke by stroke, just making sure you're happy with it as you're going. You don't want to sort of do too much too quickly. You just want to build up that glow in that area. And now we have this lovely bright glow on the outside. Let's go ahead and go back into the planet group. Let's create another new layer, tap on it, clipping mask it, and change the blend mode again from normal to add. And we're going to do the same but on the inside now. So probably with again about 4 or 5% brush size. I'm just going to rotate my canvas so it's a bit easier for me. On the inside of the planet now, I'm just going to go ahead and add in a brighter edge as well onto there, where that lighting is just so strong in the top right corner here, and you can push that up a tiny bit more so that it then bounces onto the edge of the planet as well. It's really subtle, but also we can go ahead and just bring that down. I want to make sure it's nice and small, in fact, probably around about 3%, and just bring that glow down here, really showing how it's been lit from behind. I'm going to come along here, along that edge, like there's something bright coming from behind, and it's just brightening up the edge there of the planet. Now what we can also do is we can add in our flare at this point. We can create a new layer in the planet group and change the blend mode from normal to add. We're going to go up to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab this color here at the bottom of the third column there. We're going to go to our brush, we're going to go into luminance, and we're going to use the flare brush. And size wise, it could probably be around about maybe 35%. And we're going to tap just here on the edge there. Of course, you can tap on your cursor and move it around, but you just want to just on the edge where that light is really breaking out, and you get these lovely little blends outwards of the flare, which just adds a little bit more lighting. And this may come about a little bit more in a moment where we slowly build up more and more color. Now we're going to go ahead and just on the planet for a second, we're going to go ahead and just above the texture here, we're going to create another new layer. It will stack itself in between, and we're going to go to our colors and we'll grab the color in the bottom right of the palette. Going to set our brush back to airbrushing and the soft brushing with a brush size probably around about, again, 15%. Just going to darken up this back area of the planet a little bit more. I want that edge up there to be such a strong contrast to the planet. So I've just toned that down a little bit in there, just adding in like a little ball of darkness there in that area. Now let's go ahead and add in some more details to the sky in the background. Let's compress our planet down for a minute. We're going to go ahead and in the sky group, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new layer just above that blue area that we created. So let's create a new layer. We'll go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and grab this color in the top right of the palette. We're going to go to our brush and we're going to go to the option of luminance again. And we're going to use the light pen. And I normally set that to maximum size, maximum opacity. And then all I'm going to do in here is just tap, 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 tap. Different varying amounts of pressure to add in some large stars, some smaller stars, and just little clusters here and there. We're going to bulk out the detail now of our design by adding this in. It's going to start to really all come together. We've got some Nebula effect, of course, to add in here as well in a moment. But we're just going to add in some stars and brighten up this area up here. Now what I'm going to do is, and it's something I've been doing quite frequently recently, is I'm just going to end up eventually, once I've filled in the entirety of this space up here, I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to compress it down and I'm going to add it in multiple times so I can add in lots and lots of tiny, tiny little stars in our galaxy. I want it to be nice and packed, and we don't want to spend too much time just doing little stars and little dots. So we can duplicate the layer and we can go ahead and just reuse the layer that we've already done. Now for a moment, I want you to also go ahead and just with your planet group, just turn it off for a moment, just so that you can add some stars in here based on the fact we're going to duplicate the layer in a minute. I know these ones are not going to be seen, but in a moment when we duplicate it, I don't want to duplicate the layer and there be like a big gap in the middle. So we're just going to add some stars in here. Again, everywhere that you can see in this top area, I just want to add some stars to it and add in little constellations here and there. It could be like a trail, it could be a line, it could be a certain layout, it could be anything that you feel is necessary, and you can add in some larger ones here and there as well. Really bulk out the sky, give it lovely variation in some small and medium sizes of your stars. Let's go ahead though and bring back in that planet. Carrying on with our stars, I think we can just maybe add in a few tiny little ones here and there, maybe some brighter ones as well. Mine tend to be a little bit too similar there. Now looks pretty good, some nice variety. And maybe a couple more just down here too. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to that layer, as I mentioned, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, and now pretty much go crazy. I'm just going to grab my cursor, I'm going to flip it horizontal, I'm going to flip it vertically so it's completely opposite. Using the uniform option, I'm just going to scale it down until it's maybe around about 2 squares across from our drawing grid. And then I'll tap there, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, and just fill out all the tiles of that top area. And just pinch them 2 together. Swipe from left to right and duplicate that, so it's now 4 squares, and move that across and really pack out our sky. That looks awesome. You could even swipe that to the left and duplicate it. Grab your cursor and make that really, really small down to the same size as like a singular cube here, and add in even more stars across your sky and like vary it up, flip it horizontal so it's not too symmetrical. All of these actions are pretty quick because all I'm doing is just reusing layer and filling in the entire area of the sky. In fact, I'll delete that and pinch those 2 that I created on that side and swipe that to the left and duplicate it, and just simply creating all those little dots and little dust almost I'll scale them up in size just to change it up a little bit and move it across. I just really want to pack that sky in, really give some fantastic detail. Let's go ahead and add in some further content. So let's go ahead and pinch these stars all together when you're done. Just have some fun. It's nice and random at that point. We'll go ahead and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab one of the sort of bluer tones. So we're going to grab this color here, the fourth color in that middle row. Our brush wants to go back to airbrushing and the soft brush. Again, around about 20%, I'm going to go along our horizon now and blend up this blue tone a little bit up in towards the sky, really lightly, like so. So just create a lovely little blend up of blue. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a separate layer. Feel free to do it on the same layer. New layer, color. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch it to a different tone. Now I'm going to switch it, I think, to the one in the first column. You could otherwise use the second column there. I'm going to use the first column in the middle row and just lightly now go along that horizon and brighten that blue up. I'll bring the brush size down to something a bit smaller so I can just really brighten up that horizon as if the, whatever it is on this planet that provides the atmospheric glow is just fallen round behind our horizon there. So we've got some lovely bright horizon line there. Let's then go ahead and add in some nebula effects. So underneath that, again, go down to your bluer layer here, create a new layer. We're going to go ahead and we're going to utilize a few different colors for the nebula. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the fourth color in the middle row. We're going to go to our brush. We're going to change it to the option of luminance again, and we're going to grab the nebula brush. Opacity set to 50 or 55%. Size-wise, we're going to set the first one to around about 5%, and you're just going to need to plan out your design a little bit. So I want something in the top right. I'm just going to draw it in very quickly as sort of a guide for you. I'm going to have something come sort of down here and then out under here somehow. So that's kind of roughly where I'm going to position mine. So I'm going to go ahead and start over here. I'm going to be really light with my pressure and just build up some areas of blue, keeping it really light because we're eventually going to just make our brush smaller and smaller and smaller. And I just want to go ahead and fill out an area up there to give the basic overall nebula color. Over here, I'm going to come in from the side and bring that across and a little bit down as well. And that was probably a little bit too firm on that second go. Again, I want to really build out the color, blend it out. I want to be in control of it, most importantly. So I'm just going to bring in a little bit of color there. And then over here, I'm going to bring in a long sort of one from up here. And then another patch in there. Maybe that runs out. Maybe that forks off there. Maybe it branches out. I don't want to get too close to my planet. So I'm going to probably undo that area there and just get a little bit lower. And let that just sit off to the side of my canvas. I don't want it to interfere with my planet. That's our main focal point. So I just want to move that off to the side. And you should end up with these little areas of sort of glow in the sky like so. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to have to create some more layers. So I do apologize, but we're going to create a new layer. We're going to change the blend mode from normal to add. We're going to bring the brush size down. We're going to bring it down now to around about maybe 3%. We're going to take a look in our nebulas and work out where we want to maybe start to sort of add in some brighter specks of the color too. So I've added in a big area of blue there, and I can see if I can drag that down a tiny bit. And the entire line does not have to be, like this. We don't want that consistency. We will got a light patch there, a little bit of a lighter patch maybe that makes its way off the screen. That's perfectly fine. And then the rest just fades out. That's cool. Here, I can imagine that this area here maybe would be a little bit brighter. So I'm just going to introduce like a little bit more color to there. That looks awesome. And then up here, maybe we introduce like a little bit here. Let the brush sometimes do the work for you. Just see where it wants to brighten up and where it doesn't based on your pressure, obviously. But see what happens and just roll with it. See what happens. And that looks really cool. We've got the areas nicely filled in with some different sort of area of brightness as well. Again, we're going to create another new layer, change the blend mode from normal to add again, and make the brush again a little bit smaller. So we're going to bring that brush size down to a 2 or 1%. We are also going to shortly switch to a different color. In fact, we could probably do it now. Let's grab the first color in the second row there. And then we're going to get into here and we're going to look for where our nebulas are, and we're just going to start to think about maybe just adding in a little bit of a brighter spot. So I'm going to bring that brush size of the 2% a little bit lower, and again, pressure's nice and light. I'm just seeing where I could maybe add in some very fine, brighter area. So like there, I just added a little bit on there. I'm going to brighten up again on this one and just send that into the sort of nebula body a little bit and seeing what we can brighten up. This should then give us also a little bit more of the greener colors using this particular color. You could also switch it to the second color in the palette. We are going to introduce some additional tones shortly. I'm going to go over the top almost as if they're like clouds almost. I'm just going to go over the top of that one and add in some brighter spot here and there. So it's almost like nebula clouds. I don't want to sort of run out too bright down here at the bottom, but just a little bit making its way down will look really cool. And then up here or down here, either, over here, we'll add in some more color onto there. And then seeing what we can maybe sort of tear off and bring a little bit closer towards the edge of the canvas. And again, you don't have to do all of it. You can just leave little gaps here and there. That's perfectly fine. And we've got some nice change and variety in all of those. Now, we'll go ahead and we'll keep it on the same layer for a moment. We'll go ahead and we will grab the second color in the middle row. We're going to bring the brush size down even smaller now. I'm basically at 1%. And we're going to take a look in here and see if you can just, where you've added those brighter spots, can you just now add in some additional tones? So I've got some greens in here now, which are just going to slowly really build up and add in awesome variety to our sky here. So I'm going to add in some brighter tones here. Lovely stuff. Down here, you don't have to, again, do it absolutely everywhere, but just a little bit of these additional greens may look quite nice in your sky. Here, I've already got a little bit of green. I can see some of those tones in there are a little bit greener, so I can add in a bit more on there. And nothing too bright. That's probably a little bit too strong. Maybe I add in a little bit there, and again, definitely up here. Wiggle your pen. Try not to do too many straight lines. And then we have some additional colors. We can go ahead and we can grab, for example, this color here at the bottom of the fourth column. You can get in here and you can find some of your areas and maybe just dance your pen in there and introduce a little bit of yellow in there, which to me looks fantastic. You get a really big galaxy style effect now because you're introducing multiple tones in there. I'm going to wiggle my pen along sort of the top edge of it, branching that in, and I've got this real strong contrast here, and I don't really mind that, like in this area. But you can see introducing a little bit of orange then gives you some yellow tones, some red tones, some nice variety in them. And if I move over to here, we'll do exactly the same. I'm going to do like the underside here of some of these lines that I created and see if I can just add in specks of this yellow in there. We can also add in some purple. We're going to add in some red as well. It's really fun just to build up the color. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave the bottom left. I'm going to go to the red at the bottom of the fifth column and we'll repeat, but I'm going to add some to here because I didn't add any in here. So this time this one can get a little bit more red compared to the other areas. So I'm going to wiggle my pen over the top. You can vary the size. You could maybe go up to like a 2% if you really want to, like that. Add in some really lovely change in the color. It's totally up to you. Add in some change there in the color tones, a little bit more up here. I'm just looking to just blend in some variation in there. I don't want them too crazy or too wild or too colorful, but I do want to just have that variety in the tones. And as I mentioned, we can switch to the purple as well, the fifth color in the middle row. And then in there, just again, dance your color. I've gone down to a 1% again. Maybe this purple now can branch off in certain areas here and there. Really add in some contrasting lines, some sort of parallel lines almost to some of the lines we just created. Moving across, this one has a lovely amount of color over here. And I don't think I want to overdo it too much. I'm just going to try and see if there's anything I think will look quite good. I'm just messing around. Can I do some above the line, below the line? And I think that actually looked as good as it's going to be. So I'm going to leave it as it was. I'm going to go up here and add in some purples in here and maybe the odd little speck there and maybe a little bit off over here at the top to really brighten that one up. And I'm happy with how those look. What we now need to go ahead and do is just add in some additional colors in the sky to be completely finished with the sky before we progress on to our reflection, because of course once the reflection's done you don't want to have to then change it. So one thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to that blue layer again. I'm going to go ahead and go to the layer above it, which was where all our nebulas were on. I'm going to set my color to the middle color in the second row. Same nebula, but now I'm going to go up to about 6 or 7%, and I'm going to lightly create those extra random tones. It's super light, my pressure right now. I just want to sort of vary up the sky, adding in some patchiness of blues and different hues of blue. I'm happy to leave the top right area nice and dark, but I just want that sky to not be black, completely black. I want it to have those lovely blues, very, I don't really know if it's futuristic, but that kind of Star Trek-y kind of vibe. It's just really colorful and just, very space-like. So we've got these lovely little patches of additional color in here, having some fun building up our sky. You could add like a little patch if you want to, like a little something like that. That is not a crime. I'm not going to shout at you for that. Now, before we move on, there is one change I want to make. And in the sky group, we have these two orange layers. We've got the brighter tone, which is fine. That should be set to add. But this one underneath shouldn't be set to add. It should be set to normal. So we're just going to correct that. And then the change in that should just mean that you have a little bit more of a brighter hue of color up there. And on this same layer, I'm going to switch to the orange to the bottom of the fourth column. My brush needs to go back to airbrushing and that soft brush. And again, with a sort of about 5 or 6, maybe even 7 or 8, whatever you're most comfortable with. Again, just sort of blending out a little bit more of the orange tone up into the atmosphere and a little bit wider at the top up there, just to add in that brighter color hue up in that corner. Now, one more layer before we progress on. We're going to go ahead and in front of our planet group, or even in the planet group above it, let's do that. Let's create a new layer in the planet group, set to the blend mode of, we're going to go to the option of pin light. We're going to use the same orange and the same soft airbrush. We're going to go ahead and just lightly up here. I've got the brush set to around about sort of 30% now, nice and large. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I add in like a big rounding of color. You're going to sort of add in this really nice red tone up here. So you can sort of mess around with how light or how hard you press. If you press too firm, you're going to get something like this. But if you sort of build up that color, you're just going to get a little bit more of that red tone up there. Now, we're happy with everything up there. Let's go ahead and let's go to the reflection point of this tutorial. So I want you to go ahead and collapse all your folders down. Let's turn off our midground, let's turn off our foreground, and let's turn off our water. So we should have this. Don't worry about this excess down here. I want you to have that excess. We're going to swipe down with 3 fingers and we're going to go to the option of copy all. We're going to go to our layers. We're going to go to our water. We're going to go ahead and we're going to turn it back on. We're going to create a new layer, tap on it and clip it to the water. We're then going to go ahead and swipe down with 3 fingers and go to the option of paste. It will clip itself on that empty layer that we just created, and we're just going to flip it vertically. We're going to go ahead and use freeform just to flatten it down just a tiny bit. So just a little bit. So I've taken around about 1/4 off of that. And then you're going to move it down until your horizon is nice and sort of even there. So that looks to me like that's around about there. I don't mind it being slightly further up if it means you get this solid line like here. So you get a little bit of that separation between the horizon and the reflection. So a little something like that. Tap on your cursor when you're done. And then bring back in your foreground. And then we can also go ahead and bring back in our midground. Now our midground, we just need to add one more effect to this before we duplicate it and flip it and also reflect it. So in our midground group, for example, on the left, we've got these little textures. We're going to go ahead and swipe that to the left and duplicate it. And it's going to duplicate everything. So make sure you just quickly just tap on the top one. Don't not do this. It's very important that you tap on the top one here. You can go ahead and pinch the mask to it. Tap on it. Turn off the alpha lock. Go up to your adjustments. We're going to go to the option of perspective blur. And we're going to drag this dot here to the center of our planet up there. And we're going to swipe from left to right and watch how you get this little effect here kind of drag off. Now we don't want to do 100%. We want to do something around about sort of 50% just to blur those color and highlights out a little bit. And then tap on our adjustments when we're done. And we're going to go ahead and we'll just make sure we drag that underneath the details. So the one that still has the mask to it, just to crisp up those edges a tiny bit. And then we'll repeat for the other side. So we're going to grab the other side and the details for it, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Again, make sure you tap and you can just do it on the bottom one if you want. So tap on the bottom one here, pinch the mask to it, tap on it, turn off your alpha lock, and repeat. Go back up to your actions, go to perspective blur, drag this little dot into the middle of the planet and swipe from left to right, adding in a 50% perspective blur, and then tap on your adjustments when you're done. Now they are ready to be duplicated and flipped upside down, but I don't want your layer count to sort of get too out of control. So if you want to, you can go ahead now and pinch the details and the blurred lines, etc., all onto the base shape. So here, for example, I'm just going to pinch that into one layer on the left side and then pinch it again on the right side to pinch those layers together. We're going to grab the left side first of all, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Grab either one of them and drag it down above your water. It should clip itself automatically if you drag it out of the group. And it's important that you tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Grab your cursor. We're going to go ahead and flip this one vertically. Now this one here, because of some of the details I've got, the only thing I kind of want to align is this point over here on the right hand side. Now for me, I just need to go ahead and, because of the angle of this, I could grab distort and grab this left node here and drag that down just to get a little bit more of that above sort of design onto the reflection. So I've just dragged it down a little bit like so, but of course there's a little bit of excess that you might be able to see. So I'm just going to tap on my cursor, I'm going to grab my eraser, tap on the eraser, make sure it's something solid like the monoline brush, and maximize the size and just erase anything that stretches above the top surface there. We will add a shadow eventually in here as well. I just want to get a few reflections of it. And repeat for the opposite side. So we're going to grab the right hand area of land, swipe that to the left and duplicate it. Grab either one of them and drag it out of the group and underneath, so it's just above your water, and it will clip itself automatically. Tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Grab your cursor, grab a uniform first of all, and then flip it vertically and drag it down again till the end points are nicely touching. Now this one's probably a little bit nicer than the opposite side, so I can go ahead now and just grab my eraser and just erase this bit, and I've got these awesome reflections from above. Now with them in play, we can now go ahead and we can also add some motion blurs, etc. to these. So we're going to go down to the main reflection on the water. We're going to go to our adjustments. We're going to go to motion blur. We're going to drag down, and we're going to drag down to 15%. So you can see at the top there, the 15%, and I just dragged in a straight line down. Tap on your adjustments when you're done, and then go to the two areas of land that are clipped above. You can pinch them together if you like onto one layer. We can then grab our adjustments. We can go to motion blur again and drag down again in a 15% motion blur there, just to blur them out, making sure it's nice and vertical down, and tap on your adjustments when you're done. Now we can go ahead and start to also smudge these out. We can go ahead and add some additional effects in here as well. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to pinch the two areas of land that are reflected underneath to the actual reflection as well on the water. Let's grab our water as well for a moment and just grab our colors and grab the one in the bottom right and just drag it into where that big block of color is. You won't see any visual change, but your color is now changed here, meaning we could tone that down in a moment if we want to. And just to keep your layers nice and tidy, collapse your mid-ground group down. So now you have your reflection. We're going to tap on this and we're going to add a drawing assist to it. Now we've already got the drawing assist on there, it's the grid. Meaning now if we go to the option of smudge, and we tap on smudge, we go to the Tamar brush under painting, and we set that brush size to around about 2%. We can now smudge perfectly horizontal, side to side, side to side. Now for a minute, I'm going to go ahead and swipe that to the left and duplicate it and turn off the top one. Just hit the checkbox. We'll come back to that shortly. Then go down to the one that's still turned on. And now the wonderful thing with this smudge is you can't go slightly sort of wobbly. You can only go horizontal or vertical because of the drawing guide that we have on here. And what I want you to do is I want you to look, especially for where your brighter spots is, and just sort of drag them out left and right, and just, you're going to want to have to smudge your entire reflection out, just sort of going side to side, creating water ripples where you think is applicable. I think to drag out your brighter spots is really key because they're just so lovely and bright that we can just keep them on the surface of the water. You know, you do want to drag some dark lines into them though, and maybe break them up. And this is going to take a little bit of time just to sort of smudge them out. And as you get a little bit further back, maybe you don't want to sort of smudge out too much. You know, maybe you just keep the smudging at the front there, and You can smudge back here as well, just to add in the odd tiny little line where we're just smudging out the reflection of the sky above, and push again your shadows across into your highlights, just break that down. And the drawing assist just doing all the work for us in a sense. We don't have to worry about thinking, are we horizontal, are we not? You can just smudge out to your heart's content and add in as much or as little as you like here. I think it looks best, especially right in front of us, if we add in a good amount of smudging. And then as you get further away, you just do less and less of it. Here, where we've got our hillsides, we do want to smudge them out too. So I'm dragging across, and then I'm dragging the shadow in and across and kind of breaking them down. So I'm just literally going left to right, left to right, left to right, left to right, just seeing if we can, just distort the image a little bit more, and also bring that darkness just out a little bit as well. Oh, that's lovely. We are going to add some shadows just underneath the sort of the base of this area of land in a moment, so you don't need to stress too much about it not looking quite accurate at the moment. We're just going to get our smudging in, and then we'll add some shadows down here in a minute. Very simply as well, with just a soft airbrush. I'm going to push out some of these bright spots. I just want to make sure that essentially my water just has a lovely, lovely amount of color to it, and detail at the same time. In the middle here, where it's the darkest, you might not need to do too much smudging, but as long as the aesthetic still looks the same, you'll need to make that decision. If it still looks like, hang on a minute, maybe I could add in, a few lines here and there just to match up to the smudging effect. I'll leave that totally up to you, but you don't have to do every single area. You can leave like the odd little bright spot there where the water's just flat at that particular point. So at the split second that we're looking at this, image, we're stood on the land here, that is perfectly flat and just mirrors. And that's awesome. So let's keep doing that. And I think that is pretty much everything. We've got a lovely, lovely reflection in there. Now, let's go ahead and add those shadows in for a moment. So we'll create a new layer. We're going to go ahead and continue with the color in the bottom right of the palette. Our brush wants to be the soft airbrush under airbrushing, of course, and we're going to bring that size down to something like 5% to start with. And then just down here, I want you to just shade in this area here. So just around the base of the land a little bit more, just darken up those corners, and then darken up here as well. We want to get rid of that kind of edge of the land a little bit as well, so that it just blends into the darkness. At the end of the day, it's meant to be a night scene at the same time. Now that's looking awesome. Now I'm really happy with my highlights below, but earlier I got you to make a duplicate of this, because what you can do is, for example, I just want to show you this technique, and we'll keep it in the video. I'll drag it down and in front of our other reflection there. If you set this to the option of add, for example, now obviously right now it's visible, I've turned it back on and it punches out everything like crazy. What you can then do is, if you tap on this and you add a mask to it, and then you tap on the mask to invert it from white, which is fully visible, to black, which is fully hidden. If you make sure that this is also assisted, and you tap on the mask and change your color to white by double tapping in the top left, again, this may be applicable to your design, you can pick and choose now some highlights. So what I'm doing is my brush is set to white and I'm on the mask, which is set to fully black now. But what I now draw in with white, I'm re-revealing. So I'm now going to be able to re-reveal. If we go back to our brush under painting, you can either use the Tamar brush or you can use the acrylic brush. The acrylic brush does look quite good for this. So if you set that to 2% as well, where I feel is applicable, I could go ahead and just start to draw in some additional brighter tones in here, because all I'm doing is simply revealing the add layer that is underneath. So here, where we've got our brighter tones just down here, I can go left to right here and just add in some more brighter, colourful areas here in the pinks. I can add in some variety of colour here. And now I've started, I might as well keep going on. So let's add in some additional areas there. I can do it in the distance. And I'm just pushing left to right, left to right, left to right, and just seeing if we can just bring out some additional brighter areas of our reflection. Now we've only got a couple more things we need to do before we finish. We're going to go up into our foreground group. I told you we weren't done with that yet, and we're not. We're going to go ahead, and we've got the layer here with all the blue on. We're going to create a new layer and clip it to it. So clipping mask it to it. Change the blend mode from normal to add. Go to your colors, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab the color in the middle of the far right column. We're going to go to our brush and change it back into organic and the wild grass again. Again, I've got the one on its side. We're going to bring the opacity down to about 50%, and we're going to bring the size down as well to about 2%. And I want you to sort of pick and choose where you just lightly brighten up the edge here of the grass. So maybe let's make that a bit bigger, gone up to 3% here. I just want to brighten up the very tips of some of the grass here, where I'm imagining the lighting from our sky is just brightening up a little bit, just on the edge there, just some of the blades. I want a nice randomness to it. You could even drag in a highlight like here, like a little line of color here, like a mound of the grass that's not perfectly flat, of course. And maybe there's the odd tiny little blades here and there that are just getting some little patches here, getting some highlight. Lovely stuff. Nice and random to it. Don't overthink it too much. And let's just triple check that that layer is set to add, which it is. And then over here where we've got the orange tones, let's switch the color out. Let's go ahead and grab the orange itself at the bottom of the fourth column. This can be a lot brighter, so just bear that in mind. And then when we go over these edges, just adding in some yellow right on the edge there. Look at this, is exactly the effect we want, where just the blades on the very end are just getting a little bit of the light from the environment that's happening around it. So I can add in very lightly here some additional color along there, and I kind of want those yellows to come to an end where I imagine that the light just stops. So I would imagine that's where the light for the yellow is just going to come to an end. Now we can go to that layer, we can swipe it to the left and duplicate it to make it even brighter, but then just go up to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, and let's swipe from left to right and just blur them out, just give them a bit of a glow almost. So I'm going to go up to around about sort of 10 to 15%, and then tap on your adjustments when you're done, and it should give them a lovely glow. And then the other thing we want to do is we want to go back onto that mask now. So the mask for the blue grass, I'm going to set my color to black by double tapping at the bottom of the disc to select black. And my brush wants to be the wild grass again. I'm going to set the brush size to about 3%, and let's set the opacity a little bit higher, maybe to 75%. And just in behind here, in fact, I'll go to the 50%. In behind here, I just want to sort of break down the grass a little bit in certain areas, just create variation. So I'm going to make the brush size a bit bigger, sorry, 5% now. I'm just wiggling my pen in here, patching out some darker areas in the grass. I don't want that to be perfectly flat. I want it to have mounds in there. I want it to have variation in the land, and I want it to just have a little bit more, detail essentially. So I'm getting in behind here. I can create some mounds and patches of grass, and you can tap your pen a few times. You can drag it. You can see what you like the look of. And then when you've got like a little bit of detail in there, like I have now, we can just finally switch our brush back to airbrushing again, and the soft brush under airbrushing, and set that to about sort of 5 or 6%. You can just lightly blend on top of those little cutouts you made and get right up close to the edge, just sort of feathering them out a little bit more. It should make them a little bit less bulky, a big cutout almost. And then if we go ahead and we go up to our actions, we turn off the drawing guide, we pinch with 2 fingers, and we go full screen with 4, we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed today's revisit of an old tutorial, my second that I ever made. Let me know in the comments down below if you ever completed that tutorial. And while you're down there, you can drop a like on the video, drop a comment of what you thought of today's design, and subscribe, of course, for weekly Procreate content. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations over on Instagram when you're done. Come and share them with the Discord community. It's completely free to join, and there's a link to it in the description down below. And if you want even more tutorials from me, you can come and join me over on Patreon, where I've been posting exclusive tutorials every single month, 3 every single month, and the catalogue just continues to grow. We're very nearly 100 exclusive tutorials at the time of recording. You can have your name featured in videos, sneak peeks, early access, and much more. So hit the link in the description down below and come and show your support. And if you like this video here on YouTube, you'll probably like this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching, and with all that said, I'll see you in the next one.